Well, I'm glad to be here this evening, and also it's always nice to see old friends come out to support you, one. So I'm happy for that too. And what I want to talk about is hot body, basically comes down to hot bodies and cool colors. Now, this is not an X-rated ceramic history, but simply a way to describe high-fired porcelain, or hot bodies, that are decorated with low-fired colors, cool colors. So think hot bodies and cool colors. This is an age-old method of making decorated ceramics in many cultures around the world. Today, however, we're going to look specifically at the manifestation in the United States since 1870. So let me just explain for a minute this first slide, which is a picture of Christophe Deal. He was one of the principals in Deal and Gerard, which was a very important ceramic decorating house in Paris, in the late 18th and early 19th century. And he just makes a nice introduction to the idea that China painting is a combination of art and science. So you see him here at his work desk, and there are many vials and jars behind him that contain his colors and his aromatic mediums, and you also see he's been grinding colors on that slab that's next to his hand, just to the left of his hand. He's been grinding colors with a glass pestle on what is probably a porcelain slab, and then testing the colors on a little porcelain palette, the oval palette next to it. So this is just a reminder that what we're talking about is an age-old method of decorating ceramics, but I'm not going to start at the beginning. You'll be thankful of that. There were many precedents, even in the United States, that go back to the late 18th century, and I'm not even going to start with them, because our purpose here is not to trace that history throughout the American experience, but to look specifically at the development of China painting as a studio art, and to see its progression from the 1870s in Cincinnati over a period of 100 years. And in this too, I hope I'm able to reveal to you what I believe, that it's the China painters that set the standard for what a studio art, how a studio art is practiced, being part of a home operation. Charles Fergus Binns, the first director of the School of Clayworking and Ceramics at Alfred University, is frequently cited as the father of American studio ceramics. Although he created the program at Alfred beginning in 1902, guided its development for many years, trained a large number of industrial and studio potters who in turn trained others, wrote a critical book on the subject, and generally directed the philosophy and appearance of studio ceramics in the first half of the 20th century, his role as the progenitor of the concept of studio work, I think, is greatly exaggerated. Well, what about mothers? You can't just, we know you can't just have fathers. They might be part of the process, but they're not the whole process. And a recent review of ceramic history of the late 19th century reveals that the studio movement actually had many mothers rather than a single father, that the seeds of the movement were sown in Cincinnati.
Do you want to go back?
Did we miss one?
There you go.
Ah, there we go. That's Susan Frackleton, who's a very important early China painter and founder of the National League of Mineral Painters, which was one of the earliest groups of China painters that exhibited together. And she had a China painting studio in Milwaukee. She had a lot of men and women that worked for her that decorated mundane things like this toilet set. But she also went in later to making art ceramics. That's not part of our story. The seeds of the movement were sown in Cincinnati, Ohio, rather than Alfred, New York, and tea and tea parties were important elements in the early development of the movement, which I think takes it not entirely out of the hands of Benz, but gives him some female company in any case. China painting, do you have a question?
Do you want me to move this closer?
No, this is
It's
fine.
fine? Okay.
China painting, like needlework, printmaking, and metalsmithing, was central to the emergence of the studio crafts movement in the United States during the last quarter of the 19th century. And I just use Helen Hyde as one of many women that could have been, I could put up here, because she traveled, spent many years in Tokyo. She invented a small press that she could use at home for printing her woodcuts. And I think that the sharing between needlework, printmaking, and metalsmithing was part of this emergence because the objects could be made in a home studio with generally small-scale tools, and they were easily sold or given away to women of the same class, social class. Most modern followers of the arts and crafts movement recognize that China painting played a role in developing the art pottery phenomenon. The charming story of the China paints brought to Ben Pittman's decorative art class in Cincinnati, which led, at least in a small way, to the founding of the Rookwood pottery, is repeated often in accounts of the development of the arts and crafts movement. In this tale, members of the class, and we're not looking at the class here, just a class that could be like that. Members of the class, which included Mariah Longworth Nichols and Mary Louise McLaughlin, these members who had learned wood carving and other decorating skills were introduced to China painting by Ben Pittman's assistant, Marie Eggers. Their interest in the medium was piqued first in the class and then a short time later when they were enthralled by seeing at the U.S. Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia the French Haviland art pottery painted in thick impasto with flowers and animals. And I show a French example at the bottom, the so-called barbotine glaze by Haviland. This is a puto, but you get the idea about the flowers and animals. And from the combination of China painting and having seen this French Haviland art pottery, McLaughlin and Nichols developed a way to imitate the French barbotine using old-fashioned American methods. And this is basically painting on earthenware with colored slips. Mariah Longworth Nichols liked to think she invented it, but in fact, it was Mary Louise McLaughlin who thought it up first. And they had a lot of disagreements over that, but somehow they got through it. The vase on the left, the Alibaba vase, is by Mary Louise McLaughlin, and of course you can see on the right is by Mariah Longworth Nichols. Nichols was actually the founder of the Rookwood pottery, creating it with her father's money. She said, "Daddy, I want a pottery," and so it was.